Hey everyone, welcome back to our podcast, Cover to Cover, once again for Antioch Christian Church. Again, my name is Carl. I'm one of the pastors for Antioch, and having a really good time with my friend Jason Southward, our youth champion, our children's champion. I think I'm doing that right, but basically champion of all things kids and youth, running that at Antioch. So we're glad to be back. So thanks for tuning in as we pick up the next segment of the book of Exodus, if you've been following along. So last week we were kind of in the commandments and talking about the holiness of God as we finished up through chapter 20. Today we're kind of launching into chapters 20 to 24. Again, a lot of material, a lot of things to cover. We'll do the best we can. But last week's umbrella, again, was more about the idea of the holiness of God and, in a sense, our obedience to the Ten Commandments and all of that, and how imperfectly we do that. But again, God's grace still provides provisions for us to be close to Him because He is a relational God. He's not just a punitive God, which a lot of people think about. But you and I were talking offline after we finished last week's podcast. It was kind of a point we wanted to bring out at the end of chapter 20 that we really didn't get to, but I think it's important we kind of pick that back up, as I think it'll launch us better into chapter 21 today, because today's kind of umbrella is about obedience, yes, but also the justice of God, and not only just justice in a holiness sense, but even just general day-to-day life societal systems, if you will, and how God is concerned about even justice in our day-to-day lives. But let's pick up at the end of 20 and bring out what you'd seen.
Sure, yeah. I think, even going back again, we were reminded of the very first commandment. We talked about that last week on here of like, man, if we could just get that right,
Yeah, the whole no other gods before me.
The rest of it would fall into place so well. But it's interesting how he ends chapter 20 in that. And one of the things that's interesting is in 23 it says, "Do not make any gods to be alongside me. Do not make for yourself gods of silver or gold, or gods of gold." And immediately, like anybody who knows the story jumps ahead to Exodus 32, where Moses comes down and they are worshiping the
golden calf.
And so it's just so crazy to me. Again, like you see all of these things. They were terrified. They were all of this. They saw the reverence, the holiness of God, all of these things. They're like, we're going to be obedient. Yes, we're going to do this. Yeah. But it's very interesting that God, again, starts the commandments with that, but then also reminds them again right here. It almost brings Peter vibes to me a little bit of like when he's like, you're going to deny me.
No, Jesus,
never, right? Yeah. But like we get it again just as this reminder, and then we just see how they set out to do right. They set out to do the right thing, and how quickly they got off course. And I started thinking about like my own personal walk. Mm-hmm. When I'm in the Word of God, when my prayer life is solid, when I am spending the right amount of time, like you see and feel the blessing of God on you. And when you get into seasons where you're distracted, when you get into seasons where like things aren't going as well, and you start to push those things off, and you run out of time, all of a sudden you see how quickly it can unravel. Right. Your home becomes, more whatever. I mean,
disorderly. My wife and I fight more.
Yeah. That's what I'm saying. Yeah. All of those things like so quickly start to happen when we are not doing the work, when we're not being obedient, when we're not spending time with Him, because He brought us to Him in that, and wants to spend time with Him. But like when we do the right things, we see the benefit, we reap the benefit, and how quickly our minds forget.
Yeah, He's so much more than a punitive God. Again, everyone just kind of looks at God, he's this angry guy in the Old Testament. All He wants to do is zap everybody with lightning and kill us all. And that's so not the case. He's a relational God and wants to be in fellowship with us, but we have a part to play in that. Again, reading the scriptures, my prayer life, my time at church. What do I say yes to in my life? What should I be saying more no's to? What do I let my kids get involved in? Are they overcommitted? All these things kind of peel us away from, again, a walk with God. And again, God's not in a sense demanding that we're on our knees 24/7. That's all we do. Right. But I think we all have been in those seasons where, man, I don't feel that close to God. Well, God hasn't gone anywhere, right? He's still faithful. He is still there. It's we that kind of pull back, And
it's when we do that, like something else is taking His place.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And that's
There's
the
God.
Like,
there's the other
it?
God.
Right.
Where's my golden calf in this? Because if we're truly honest, we've all had multiple golden calves throughout our walk and our time with him. And it's crazy. It's really easy to pick on the Israelites, right? And this idea, like, my goodness, he's just a few verses after saying, no other gods before me. And before we leave the chapter, he's like, do not make any gods be alongside me. Nothing of gold, silver. We're like, did they forget? It's been like 8 sentences. But again, it's easy for us to pick on them, but you and I'll speak for myself.
Sure.
I'm no different.
No, both of us.
I understand what the word says. I've been through it, and I'm still prone to wander. I'm still prone to usurp God's number one spot with other things in this life. Yeah. And so that's contextualizing this, again, how I think we can all still relate to it, even though it's Old Testament, Old Covenant stuff. It is just as applicable today.
Yeah. No,
cool. All right. Well, we move towards 21. Again, there's still an understanding that we obviously need to follow God. We need to have a sense of obedience. But now we get into this relational stuff, and now it seems like God is setting the tone for even the culture. Again, he's actually now, as they're moving through this journey eventually to get to the Promised Land, he's kind of just teaching them how to live. He set the authority. I am God, no other gods before me. Here's your, in a sense, the 10 Commandments, the laws. But again, you know as well as I do, society has got a lot of things that we need decisions and answers for, and how to just live day to day. Sure. You set up any culture, there's a legal system of you can do this, you can't do that. Oh, if this happens, then this needs to happen. And that's what I'm seeing what God is doing as we're talking about, hey, if you have a servant working in your household, this is how you're to treat them. Yeah. This is how you treat their family. If somebody is injured, this is how you are to treat them. This is how you're to respond. And so it's almost like he's setting up just some general cultural norms of how to follow them, but then also how to make restitution if something goes wrong or something goes badly, which also then gives us this idea of justice that we also want to talk about before we end in chapter 24.
Yeah, and I think that there's a piece of it that, again, as you read through this, like that we can look at and be like, these seem still kind of like some harsh rules, like some of the ways, but like the things that seem strange today would have actually been so much more humane than what they were used to and what they've seen.
Oh, yeah, after the oppression in Egypt,
that culture, like how slaves were treated, how these people were treated were much worse.
Right.
And so God is trying to restore some of those things. He's actually being more humane. He's bringing a actual compassion toward people. And it's sometimes hard to read in that, but we have to see it from where they were and how God is bringing them into a new way of thinking, a new way of treating people in that.
That's a good point, because even the very opening part of chapter 20, it talks about Hebrew servants. It's a little bit foreign to us because we, modern day culture, we're in 2026. I don't have servants in my household. But again, if their only context, again, they were slaves in Egypt for over 400 years and they were treated horribly.
Right.
Well, in an interesting way, I bet by default, I have servants in my house, which is a very common practice. That's not a bad thing. But I bet by default, because all they've seen for 400 years is how to treat a slave harshly, there's quite the possibility that they would have defaulted to, well, this is how a servant is to be treated. And God's like, no, that's not. We need to have a sense of fairness. There needs to be a sense of justice. There needs to be, we need to care for everybody in your household, including your servants. So I think that's a good point that you're bringing up to this. But again, the understanding that God cares about all aspects of our life. There's no detail too small that God does not want to be involved in, not because he's a micromanager, but because he cares about it, and ultimately he knows the best way to operate life as a whole anyways. And again, so as he kind of continues to set up these cultural norms, the way I'm kind of calling it, or setting up these systems for them and how to live, and then how to seek justice if you've been wronged, et cetera, again, is providing for them a framework of how to be a nation that he ultimately is to be a nation after his own heart.
Yeah. I mean, it's like, again, like we see in the scripture that God is called a good judge. And like there's some pieces of, things even in conversations that we have with people who are atheists today. Like they'll have this conversation of like, why would God let good people go to heaven? Or like, why would God allow this to happen? Or why would God allow that to happen? And we have to go back at some level and be like, okay, well, like why would God allow someone to go to hell? Well, he would, because he's a good judge.
Yeah.
And so we have to bring it back to that sometimes. And so like it does, like there are things in here that like don't apply to us necessarily, but the concepts within this like can truly apply to some of the situations that that we're in as well.
He is a just and fair God. He is not unreasonable. And again, the reason I find most people call God unreasonable is because there's just things in their life they don't want to surrender to him. I want to keep doing my sin. I want to keep doing my habits. I want to keep doing my things that are apart from the will of God.
Yeah.
And so they look at God as unreasonable because I can't get to do whatever I want whenever I want.
Right.
It's like we're just grown-up toddlers.
Yeah, I mean, we live in a world that we don't have to take responsibility for our actions.
That's true.
Like you look at our justice system, you look at all these things, and like nobody has to take responsibility for their own actions. And so to even see some of that stuff in here of like God is actually calling people to account, like for their own actions, for the things they're doing. And saying like we will not live like that. Like that is not a holy way to live, and I'm a holy God. And so getting through the the 10 Commandments and then into all of this, it's just like, all right, like God is truly setting a standard, a way of living, and He continued to do that, and He shows us that all the time.
And the relational piece again, He wants to be involved in what some might say the trivial matters, but they're a big deal. So if I take at the beginning of chapter 22, the protection of property. Hey, if a man steals an ox or a sheep and slaughters it or sells it, he must pay back 5 head of cattle for the ox and 4 sheep for the sheep. If a thief is caught breaking in and is struck so that he dies, the defender is not guilty of bloodshed. But if it happens after sunrise, he is guilty of bloodshed. The thief must certainly make restitution, but if he has nothing, he must be sold to pay for his theft. So again, God is making provision for justice.
Right.
And so again, that's an important thing because again, bad things do happen. People do take advantage of us. Mistakes happen. The world is not so neatly ordered that everyone follows the way of God. And so the idea that they can get some justice, I think, is important. And again, showing again that He cares about every aspect of their life. And there is consequences. I mean, it shows that there are consequences for wrongdoing.
Right. Yeah.
And I think that's a good thing to keep
in mind. We skipped over 1 and 21 that I think we have to hit for all the parents
Please
out here,
do.
right?
Go back. Okay.
21:17. First of all, 10 Commandments says honor your father and mother. But 21:17 says anyone who curses their father or mother is to be put to death. How about that? You hear that, kids? Like, go ahead, parents. Parents, show them that scripture. Don't use it out of context, all right? Like, that's not, just not doing. But, like, the fact that, like, it is a commandment. And he says something like this does like put like me as a dad, like I start to think about like what does it look like for my child to honor me? What does it look like? Like I see that, and like again the word curse, like we think of it differently. Like we're just like if our kids are yelling at us, like that's not them cursing us, right?
Right.
This would be an unholy like tear down of their parents, like wishing bad things on them, all of that kind of stuff. Like it's much deeper than like the joke that I made in that.
Yeah,
right?
Oh, of course.
But I do think about it as a parent sometimes to be like, oh man, what does it look like to raise a child who can honor us? And like, but that means that I have to live a life that's worthy of being honored.
Yeah, that's right.
And so like then I was
kids
like,
are watching, right?
They're watching. Everybody's watching.
They're paying attention.
Even when you think they're not, like people are watching. Kids are watching, and so. Anyway, I did want to hit that mostly somewhat as a joke, but also like it hit me as a dad thinking about my daughter. Like, oh man, would my daughter ever curse me? Would my daughter what would that look like? Oh my goodness! Like, how much of a responsibility do I have to raise her and to live according to the things and the standards that God has set for me? So.
Right, and you and I have worked with kids and youth for half a zillion years. That's been the crux of our ministries, long time, but. The idea that the importance of the family unit, right? There's this initial piece that through the family unit, a mom and a dad, we kind of set that template for how to honor God. And in a sense, our kids look to us, that first idea of understanding, I need to obey someone of authority over me.
Yeah.
God sets that through the family. Again, parents are to be the primary spiritual leaders of the home. How many times have we said that in ministry?
Right.
Parents are to be the primary spiritual leaders of the home. So many folks, I think, they try to absolve themselves, and they're like, well, I'll just send them to church, and we'll let church do all the work. I literally answered an email the other day of a guy's like, well, my wife and I don't go to church. I was raised in it, but I've walked away. But we're just kind of letting our kids choose whatever path they want. And he seems to like your youth group, so we don't care if he goes.
Yeah.
And I'm like, first off, I mean, I was thankful that he lets his kid come, but in a way, that's not really letting him off the hook of what his responsibility, his God-ordained responsibility is supposed to be. I'm not picking on the guy. He was probably never taught that, growing up. But again, that's God sets a lot of importance in the family unit and how the mom and the dad are to be that template to point their kids towards Christ and a walk with Him. And so there's this idea that eventually, though, as a parent, my biggest job is to help them transfer their dependence from me to God.
Yeah.
And how they see me live, how they see me operate, how they see me talk to my wife.
Sure.
How they see me operate in my career and just day-to-day living is a big part of that, and because they're watching.
Yeah, they are. Yeah.
So good stuff, man. Thanks. And so what do you got? Anything else we pick into 22?
I mean, 22, I think you see the compassion, the care that God has for people, because this is where they start talking about like taking care of the widows, taking care of the poor, all of these things, like the punishment for theft and the wrongdoing on other people like that. I think there's a generosity in here. Like ultimately, like we got to take care of these people. Like you have to be generous with your things. If you have something and you can give it to them, give it to them. Like there's an aspect of generosity that is brought up in here, which is very interesting to me.
Oh, good point.
In that's just like, oh yeah, like we need to be generous with the things that we have. Like if we can take care of the poor, take care of the poor. Like let's go do that. If we can take care of our neighbor, take care of our neighbor. Let's go do that. Like God is calling us to that, even within like commands that He's given in here. And
Would you say it's almost like building a healthier community?
Right.
Because we now live in a day and age where it's mine and I clutch it. And in a sense, God's kind of setting this template like, no, it's everything belongs to me anyways, by the way.
Yeah, right.
But it's designed to share. But yes, there'll be restitution if something happens. Like even if verse 14 in chapter 22, if a man borrows an animal from his neighbor and it's injured or dies while the owner is not present, he must make restitution. But if the owner is with the animal, the borrower will not have to pay. If the animal was hired, the money paid for the hire covers the loss. So again, God pays attention to detail. He wants fairness. He wants justice. But we are to share with other people what God has blessed us with. Yeah. Again, it's not to clutch. We can't take anything with us.
Right.
The jokes are real, right? There's no U-Haul attached to the hearse.
Right.
But when we use our resources that God has blessed us with to help other people, that's how community functions better, because we're all taking care of one another.
Yep. I mean, and then in 25, it's like if you lend money to one of my people among you who is needy, do not treat it like a business deal. And I think that sometimes even like, I don't know, like I feel like even our offerings sometimes can just feel like a business deal. Like I feel like, oh man, I got to check this box. Like I owe this money. Like I'm going to do this. And like, it just like, whatever.
Yeah.
And like, we hate talking about money, all this stuff. And I get it. I do get it. Like I understand that we all have a place like that, like man, we've done this, we've earned this, all of those things. And we have that inside of us. But ultimately, like, man, when it comes to like that full surrender, when it comes to like this is literally God talking about how to care for people. Yeah. And that is part of like what we give back to God.
Because that's the church is to be the hands and feet of Christ to care for people, take care of the widows, take care of the orphans, take care of your fellow person, your neighbor.
So anyway, those all kind of hit me in the conversation of that. And I was just thinking about generosity, about giving, about all those things. I'm like, man, how often can we treat it like that as well? But he's saying, man, don't do that. Don't charge interest. Don't do it as, trying to even do it for yourself. Like, don't worry about the return aspect of it. Like, just do it because you can do it.
Right. But do you notice? Look what happens in verse 28. He sprinkles back in the holiness piece, right? Don't forget, do not blaspheme God or curse the ruler of your people. He brings that back in. Don't forget,
right?
Hey, again, if we get the number one right, no other gods before me. So much of this falls into place,
right?
But again, I like that he does that. He keeps that in place because again, in verse 31, why? Because you are to be my holy people. That is ultimately what he wants. What's best for us. He wants us to be to feel that blessing of his favor. Yeah. But again, we have a part to play in that. Now, we don't earn God's favor. He loves us no matter what. He loves us in the midst of our screw ups. Yeah. But we have a part to play in our walk with him. And again, and the beautiful thing is he sets out the template, but he also gives us other lenses to look through about justice and fairness, how to treat other people. If the idea treat your neighbor, love your neighbor as yourself, this is still kind of a beautiful, kind of a deeper expounded template for how to do that. Again, setting up culture, setting up society, and how to function within that society.
Yeah.
Ultimately. Cool. All right, we'll keep moving on. What do you got? Anything out of 23?
I mean, 23 for me is like, There's a lot of God like shaping the integrity of his people and like teaching them how to live with integrity, live
Yep.
with character, all those things, like the values of truthfulness, the values of justice, the values of don't be slanderous, don't be,
Don't
don't
gossip.
take
Don't spread
bribes, all
false.
those
Don't
things.
spread
Yeah,
false
don't
reports.
spread false reports. Do not accept a bribe. Like,
Right.
it's like we need to be people who live honorable lives, and
Right.
it's that whole thing that we keep coming back to. Like, people are watching us.
Yeah.
Like,
We think words are innocent. We think, but again, gossip was bad then, it's bad now. And
Yeah.
God hears us. And so again, the idea of what comes out of our mouth is important.
Yep.
And so he's setting that up because again, it's a very natural human tendency to backstab, to gossip, to, let our mouths kind of run amok, if you will. And so I like the fact that he's like, no.
And I think there's a piece in here in verse 6, 23 verse 6. It says, "Do not deny justice to your poor people in their lawsuits." And if I just took the lawsuits out, like I think about like poor people or like the people we would consider outcast or outsiders or all of
Yes,
these
it doesn't have to
things.
just be economic.
Right. It doesn't
Yeah.
have to just be economic. I just think of like, man, how do we actually treat them? Like there are times that I walk on the side of the road and I see this person and I'm like, I want to walk on the other side of the road.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh man, like that is a terrible thought to think.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, and like, where is my heart in that? And
Right.
like, again, I think God is teaching us like that we should have eyes to see people who are in need, and I think that's a super important thing for us.
Cool. I know we'll end up running short on time, but I think a couple of final things to kind of get into is, again, it's easy to see this idea that setting up justice between, people, between you and me, between our neighbor, between our friends. But he even pays attention to the idea of the land. Because they're agricultural, right? They grow things, they have crops and so forth like that. But again, God created everything and everything was good. He created the land, he created the animals, and obviously he creates us. But look at the provision he does in verse 10 of 23. "For 6 years you are to sow your fields and harvest the crops, but during the 7th year let the land lie unplowed and unused." He even gives the land time to rest and let the wild things grow up, the natural things grow up, because again, the poor among your people may get food from it. Let them take what the Lord provides. And man, again, he pays attention to everything. There's no detail too small that he's not caring for his people.
Yeah.
And so I think that's just it's a little snippet, but I think it's valuable that he cares, that we're to take care of this world. Take care of the land. And I think that he sets out provision for that. And I think that's a pretty cool God that he even says to take care of, your crops, your land, and all of that stuff. And so, any kind of parting thoughts before we kind of wrap things up? Because now we get into things like festivals, to remember me, to honor me. We get into, again, but then he says that if we get into near the end of 23, "I'm sending an angel ahead of you to guard you." God still says, hey, I'm still protecting you. I'm still with you. I'm still guarding you, right? He's still protecting them, but stay obedient and stay faithful. And that you can contextualize that all day long.
Yeah.
Stay obedient, stay faithful. I'm still your God. I still love you. I'm still looking out for you. I'm still protecting you. And we see that continuing on as they continue their journey, which is, ultimately towards the promised land. So any kind of closing thoughts before we wrap this up?
Yeah, I mean, just there's a piece of, again, like God is calling us to all of these things. He's teaching us a way to live. He's asking us to be obedient. But at the end of the day, obedience is always connected to a blessing. And we see that in all of this. Like every time, like when we're obedient, these things happen. When we're obedient, people are taken care of. When we're obedient, like we, are honoring of God. When we're obedient, and then we get all of these things coming. And so I just think it's really cool that, again, and it's true for us. Again, when I said in the beginning, it's true. When I am obedient to God, there is almost always blessing on the other side of that in some way, shape, or form. And I get to feel it and I see it. And then when I'm disobedient, all of a sudden, like, oh, yep, I feel that too. And so I just it came back together for me, reading back through this again. So,
and I think we have a responsibility as we feel that blessing, and that's I think what God wants us to share with other people. I have blessed you. You have this, maybe, because there's always going to be people in culture and society who have more than we do.
Sure.
But there's always going to be people maybe who have less than we do.
Yeah.
Okay. It doesn't mean God loves you more, loves you less, but man, when I feel that blessing and I'm kind of connecting, I'm kind of firing on all cylinders, if you will, in my walk with God, man, I love sharing that blessing with other people. And I think what he's setting this out is how to make provisions to help other people as well. Yes, I want to pour into your life. Yes, I want to bless you, but don't forget, it's not just for you. It's so you can bless other people as well.
Yeah.
I think that's an important thing because, again, as we talk and we end these things, love God, love people, make disciples, that is how we're going out and trying to bless other people with these truths, not because we're trying to be smarter or we're trying to hit them over the head with all this. No, we want them to understand that God wants a relationship with them as well. And sometimes, again, when I'm able to share the blessings he's bestowed upon me or what he's worked through me, even in my screw-ups or even amidst my disobedience, man, I think, again, testimony, which you talked about before, that becomes a great blessing to somebody else to encourage them to lean into God, even if they feel like they've pushed away. He has not gone anywhere. He still loves you. He's always with you, and he can't wait to renew that relationship with you.
Yeah.
So cool. So with that, we better close this out, but hope you tune in next week for the next round of Exodus. But again, thanks for tuning in today. So as we always say, love God, love people, go make disciples. You are sent.